At 2:47 a.m., 5 Ukrainian FPV drones are zooming through occupied Crimea at 120 kilometers per hour, on a mission to hit a Russian train heading to a depot in 87 minutes. They've got to cover 160 kilometers of tricky airspace fast. But 40 kilometers ahead, a Russian radar operator is about to make things a lot tougher. The operator's screen lights up with contacts, a truck on the M18, a water tower near the army base, and some birds sending weak signals. Suddenly, a faint return pops up 38 kilometers away, heading south at 120 kilometers per hour. Radar catches it all, filtering out the background noise. Radar waves are pretty cool. They bounce off stationary objects and just disappear, but moving one stick around. Here's the twist. A drone zooming at 120 kilometers per hour gives off the same signal as a car on the highway. And a flock of birds. They can look just like a little drone. When something pops up and disappears, the computer usually just assumes it's wildlife and moves on. Hovers over the alert key. One more clean sweep and he escalates. Calls it in. Wakes up the entire air defense network. He watches the antenna complete its rotation. Beam washing across the northern sector. Gone. The drone dropped into a shallow valley for kilometers long. A valley Ukrainian planners identified from satellite imagery weeks ago. Radar travels in straight lines, but the earth curves away beneath it. A transmitter 14 meters tall can only see targets above the radar horizon. Drop below that line. A beam sweeps over the valley, cutting through shadows. The operator runs another sweep. Nothing. Then a blip appears, could be wildlife, maybe just another bird, but something feels off. The heading's to steady, the speed to consistent. Birds, it doesn't seem right. What's going on? Don't fly in straight lines at 120 km/h for 3 consecutive sweeps. But the computer says wildlife. The track is broken and he has 300 other contacts demanding attention. He exhales, takes his finger off the alert key, checks his watch. 0 to 5:3. 3 hours until shift change. Nothing unusual tonight. For more, FP2S followed the same path over the next 6 minutes, treading through the valley that Ukrainian planners mapped specifically for this approach. The cost to log 0 confirmed tracks, $60 million of hardware designed specifically to catch exactly these targets. Defeated by a 4 kilometers depression in the earth and software that couldn't tell a weapon from a bird. Fuel remaining 68%. Train distance to depot 65 kilometers. The drones are through the first layer, but the operators in Crimea know what's waiting in central Crimea. And compared to what comes next, that radar was a warm-up. The GPS indicator flickers once, shows garbage, and then goes dark. The lead Ukrainian operator doesn't panic. He expected this. Somewhere below, Russian Pol 21 jammers, mounted on cell towers, are pumping 20 watts of noise into the sky. The GPS satellites 20,000 kilometers overhead are transmitting at 110 billionth of a watt. A whisper from space against a scream from the ground. Trying to hear them through that static is like trying to hear someone talking at a rock concert. The satellites are still there. The drone just can't hear them anymore. Ukraine loses hundreds of drones a month to this. Without GPS, cheap. Quadcopters have no idea where they are. They wander off course like your wife in Target when she spots the seasonal aisle. And you can yell her name all you want, but she's not hearing you over those throw pillows. The drones are the same. The operators send commands, but nothing gets through to the static. They circle uselessly until their batteries drain and drop into fields where nobody finds them. The feed just goes dark. The FPTA was built for exactly this problem. The moment GPS fails, 3-ring laser, gyroscopes, and 3 accelerometers take over. The gyroscopes measure rotation by racing laser beams around triangular paths. When the drone turns, one beam travels slightly farther than the other, creating a frequency shift measured in billionth of a meter. No moving parts, no gears, just light racing around glass, measuring every turn the aircraft makes. The accelerometers track velocity by measuring how a tiny mass shifts against microscopic springs. The navigation computer fuses everything together, continuously updating position based on the last known GPS fix. The math is elegant. The problem is drift. Small sensor errors accumulate over time. A gyroscope measuring 0.01 per second when the drone is actually flying straight adds music up to 36 of phantom rotation over an hour. An accelerometer with a tiny bias, maybe 0.001 grams, accumulates as phantom velocity, then phantom distance. The navigation computer uses something called a Kalman filter to minimize these errors, continuously weighing each sensor's reliability against the others, and calculating the most probable position. But even the best filter can't eliminate drift entirely. Over a 90-minute flight, position uncertainty can grow to 5 or 8 kilometers, enough to miss a target entirely if you're flying autonomous to GPS coordinates. But the FP2 isn't autonomous. The operator can see live video from the nose camera. He'll music steer by eye when it counts. He just needs the instruments to get him close enough to find the target. The jamming network, blanketing Crimea designed to knock drones out of the sky, might as well be an expensive radio station playing static to an audience that isn't listening. Fuel remaining 54%. INS uncertainty to 0.8 kilometers. Train distance to depot 50 kilometers. The window is still open. Then something unexpected happens. The GPS indicator flickers back to life. Signal acquired. For satellites. Position fix valid. The operator frowns. Jamming this deep into Crimea runs 24/7. No gaps. No windows. The drone didn't climb. Didn't cross into clear airspace. Nothing changed. Then he looks at the coordinates. According to GPS, his drone is flying 12 kilometers east of where the camera shows it should be. The roads in this video don't match the roads at the GPS position. A water tower visible in the feed doesn't exist at those coordinates. Nothing lines up. This isn't jamming. Jamming drowns the signal. This is something worse. A GPS spoofer like you see here broadcasts fake satellite signals. Identical format, false timing, creating phantom coordinates that don't exist. GPS receivers calculate position by measuring the time delay from multiple satellites. Change those timing values by a few nanocons and you shift the calculated position by meters. Change them by microsecons and you shift it by kilom. The receiver locks into the lie because a ground transmitter will always overpower satellites 20,000 kilometers away. An autonomous drone trusting those false coordinates flies toward nothing. A sophisticated spoofer can feed fake altitude data, convince the autopilot it's 500 meters higher than reality, and watch the drone correct itself straight into the ground at cruise speed. The Russians built this system to take out Ukrainian drones without firing a shot. Elegant, cheap, effective. Against the FP2, completely useless. Those backup instruments never stopped running. When GPS suddenly claims the drone teleported 12 kilometers without the accelerometers detecting movement, without the gyroscopes registering a turn, the computer knows the satellite signals are lying. Physical objects don't teleport. The math doesn't lie, even when the signals do. But that's not all Russian spoofers can do. Real GPS signals come from satellites scattered across the sky, each arriving from different angles. A ground spoofer broadcasts from one location. All signals arriving from the same direction at the same time. The software checks for this. If all the signals come from the exact same angle, they're fake. The spoof signals fail that test, too. The operator toggles GPS off. False coordinates vanish. Back to backup instruments. Uncertainty circle growing again. But honest uncertainty beats confident lies. The whole thing cost 30 seconds. 30 seconds of confusion. Verification reset. Meanwhile, the train covered another 600 meters toward safety. Fuel remaining 41%. INS uncertainty for 0.1 kilometers. Train distance to depot 35 kilometers. The window that was barely enough is now barely not enough. The operator pushes the throttle forward, trading fuel for speed. Somewhere ahead, a train is still rolling through the darkness. He has maybe 10 minutes to find it before the depot's air defense umbrella makes finding it irrelevant. The operator switches to thermal and starts scanning the rail line. In infrared, steel tracks glow faint and cold. Metal conducts heat faster than soil, so the rails have dropped below ambient temperature in the December night, radiating their stored warmth into the freezing air faster than the ground around them. Dark lines against warmer fields. The thermal camera doesn't see light. It sees temperature differences, converting infrared radiation into grayscale images where hot objects glow white and cold objects fade to black. He follows the tracks north from the depot. Methodical grip tied on the joystick. Video feed scrolling at 30 frames per second. 3 seconds of empty track dot for dot 5. Then he sees it. Bright white signature moving south. Locomotive engine blazing against frozen fields. Behind it, rectangular shapes in a line. Tank cars glowing faintly from residual warmth from the fuel inside. He counts them. 23 cars, diesel, and aviation gas that will never reach Russian forward units if he has anything to say about it. But it's closer than the depot than he'd hoped. 20 kilometers out, rolling at 40 km/h, maybe for minutes before he reaches the air defense umbrella. He has a choice. Wait for the train to stop at the depot and strike a stationary target. Easy geometry, high probability, or strike. Now while it moves, and burning wreckage blocks the rail line for days. He chooses now, but that's easier said than done. Most strike drones fly autonomous to GPS coordinates, buildings, parked aircraft, fuel tanks, anything that holds still. But a train at 40 km/h covers 330 meters during the 30 seconds of final approach. GPS guidance would miss by 3 football fields. The FP keeps a human in the loop until impact, steering by eye toward a target that won't stop moving. 170 kilometers away in Surzan, the operator's video feed travels through a relay drone orbiting at high altitude, a mirror in the sky, bending the signal around the Earth's curve. When he nudges the joystick, the command travels up to the relay, down to the FP2, and into the flight computer. 200 milliseconds of latency. He has to lead his inputs, aiming where the target will be, not where it is. He drops the drone to 20 meters, grass-cutting altitude, invisible to most radar. Throttle back to match the train's speed, for 100 meters behind in closing. Inside the locomotive cab, the engineer has no idea what's coming. His instruments show a quiet night, green lights across every panel, fuel pressure steady, speed holding at 40 km/h. Through his widescreen, he sees dark fields, distant village lights, stars scattered across a clear winter sky. The rumble of 4,000 tons of fuel behind him drowns out everything else. He's been running this route for 3 months. The same schedule, the same checkpoints, the same radio calls. Tonight was supposed to be routine. The depot was 12 kilometers away. In 4 minutes, he'd hand off the cargo, grab coffee, and wait for the return run. He had no idea those 4 minutes would never arrive. If he knew where to look, he might glimpse a dark shape crossing those stars. He doesn't know. 200 meters behind now. 100. The operator picks his target. Third tank car behind the locomotive. Far enough back that the impact won't just derail the engine and let the rest coast free. Close enough that what follows spreads both directions along the train. Fuel remaining 19%. Distance 50 meters. Crosshairs locked. The second FP2 is 800 meters behind the music first, lining up on a different car. The third is angling towards the rear of the train. Fourth and fifth have already broken south toward the depot itself, 12 kilometers ahead. And they've been detected. The depot's Panzer S1 picks them up on thermal imaging at 8 kilometers. 2 small signatures approaching at 120 km/h. Altitude 20 meters. The radar, designed to track cruise missiles and fighter jets, filters them out as ground clutter. The operator curses under his breath and switches to electro-optical mode, tracking manually through what amounts to be a very expensive telescope with guns attached. His twin to 3.8mm autocannons can pump out 5,000 rounds per minute. At this range, he has maybe 15 seconds of engagement time before the drones reach maximum range, 500 meters, where the guns physically cannot depress low enough to track ground skimmers. Every weapon system has geometry limits. The Panzer's turret can depress to -5, which means anything below that angle relative to the horizon becomes untouchable. The system was designed for cruise missiles and aircraft approaching from above, not dinner plate-sized targets hugging the terrain. He opens fire. The 30mm rounds use programmable air burst fusing. A tiny radar in each shell's nose measures distance the target matches the preset value the round detonates. Each one fragments into roughly 400 pieces of steel shrapnel expanding in a 4-meter sphere. At 5,000 rounds per minute, he's creating overlapping destruction zones faster than the drones can fly through them. The fourth drone vanishes at 2,100 meters. Shrapnel through the battery pack. 1 down. The fifth drone immediately drops to 10 meters and jinks hard left below the Panzer's depression limit, now using the terrain as cover. The gunner tries to reacquire, transversing his turret, but the barrels are already glowing cherry red from sustained fire. At 5,000 rounds per minute, each barrel is cycling 40 times per second, and the friction of brass cartridges plus the heat of burning propellant adds up fast. Steel barrels start losing temper at round 400 C. The rifling grooves that spin the rounds begin to erode, then deform. He has to cease fire. Let the barrels cool. 12 seconds minimal. The fifth drone pushes through the gap. Fuel remaining 7%. The depot storage tanks loom in. The thermal display. Cylindrical shapes behind concrete walls designed to contain spills, not deflect warheads. 3 minutes from the depot. Everything is lined up. Now or never. The first FP to hits the third tank car at 0357 local time. 105 kilograms of high explosive punches through steel into 40,000 L of diesel. Fuel sprays into the void, mixes with air, and ignites. Diesel doesn't detonate like gasoline. It burns. But 40,000 L burning inside of a ruptured pressure vessel makes the distinction academic. Temperature at the center exceeds 1000 C. Steel softens at 500. Inside the cab, the engineer is thrown against his console. Warning lights cascade across every panel. Through his rear window, he sees orange light painting the sky. His cargo transforming into a wall of fire behind him. He reaches for the radio to report. The depot needs to know. The second FP to hits before he can key the MIC. With the train immobilized, geometry gets easy. The second operator picks a car near the rear. Spread the total destruction is the goal, nothing left behind. Another fireball shoots into the December night. 8 seconds later, the third drone hits the center of the formation, turning the rail line into a blazing corridor of fuel stretching for 100 meters in both directions. Meanwhile, 12 kilometers south, the fifth drone is closing in on the Bamman depot, targeting the fuel storage tanks. Without a place to store fuel, those pipes moving it from rail cars to trucks are totally useless. Just 200 meters to go. The battery's flashing red at 4%, and at 100 meters, it drops to 3%. The motors cut out 50 meters from the target, and the drone speeds home at 120 kilometers per hour. Boom. The tank explodes, sending fuel everywhere and sparking more blasts. Each tank lights up the southern sky. The gunner watches his screen, frustrated. $20 million in air defense tech is useless as a drone finishes its mission. Just one drone slipped through, and now every fuel shipment gets rerouted through low-stock depots, places that Ukrainian intel is already monitoring. Bye for now.